Welcome to the Proposal Playbook Podcast. Every 2 weeks, our CEO Joe Ardeeser will share actionable steps based on his experience running his own digital agency for more than 12 years. He will teach you how to write proposals that eliminate scope creep, productize your offering, and increase profitability. Make sure you subscribe to ensure you are building your own digital library of smart proposals that work using the Proposal Playbook strategies. Welcome to the pilot episode of the Proposal Playbook. My name is Kevin Pruitt, and it is my honor to host this brand new podcast with my friend Joe Ardeeser. Joe, thanks for joining us on the Proposal Playbook.
I'm excited. Thanks, Kevin.
So to lay just a little bit of foundation here before we get started, the purpose of this podcast is to really show the worth and the value of quality proposals. So how do you write them? How do you make them effective? How do you utilize them? How to just all the how-tos around true proposal writing and submitting proposals to companies so that you have this great return on investment. Joe, tell us a little bit, before we get started here, tell us a little bit about Smart Pricing Table, the sponsor of our podcast.
Yeah, well, Smart Pricing Table is interactive B2B proposal software. We have a bent towards digital agencies because that's my background. I'm a former agency owner, and we actually built it originally to solve our own needs. One kind of interesting thing about me, Kevin, I actually freaking love proposals. I once was on a podcast and the host said, I've never heard anyone say that. But I really enjoy it because they can be the real difference maker for your company.
There is no doubt about that. And the thing that I really want to let's just get started. Let's just start adding value from day one here. Tell us, why do they matter? I mean, I know you like them, but why is it so important to have quality proposals?
Yeah. Well, I look at businesses kind of like a cavern, and there's these different rooms, these different cracks and crevices and parts of the cavern. And being successful in business is all about exploring those caverns and mastering them, right? Like really understanding what's going on with your business, with the market. And I think that proposal writing is one of those caverns. And what I discovered is, a proposal really at the end of the day is kind of like a plan. You might just call it that, right? You're putting together a plan for your prospect on a successful project, right? Well, if it's actually about a plan, then all of a sudden the proposal is kind of the foundation of the project. And I love the saying, fail to plan and you're planning to fail. So I look at proposal writing as I am setting the tone, the terms, the trajectory, the 3 T's, I just made that up, for the entire project. And so it's vitally important. That's the biggest thing that comes to mind.
So, you always hear people talk about, how important first impressions are. You've got like 7 seconds to capture somebody, when they're first looking. I think there's a certain parallel here with proposals. So, I mean, I look back at people that have sent me, different proposals for projects that we've got going on. And if there's one that really looks like, time was spent, great graphics, really clear scope that is outlined, clear pricing, it just stands out. And to me, it like augments the professionalism, of the company itself. Have you found that to be true?
Yeah, well, you've got to stand out. And, unfortunately, a lot of marketing agencies, a lot of businesses, what they're sending out is generally like a static PDF, which is very, indistinct, right? I mean, a lot of times what you'll see is, a kind of a cover page and then a bunch of text, right? Yep. And if the internet has done anything for us, it's taught us not to read or have attention spans, right? TikTok, all these things, right? And so a lot of times it's just a lot of stuff to take in, and you're not getting a lot of quick value. And so for the things I think of are a nice cover page, simple biographical information. Don't go overboard. It's not about you, it's about them, right? Their challenge. Simple terms, not 10 pages of contractual agreements. But where I think a lot of agencies, a lot of businesses are getting it wrong is the actual offering. Okay. The offering is, again, just kind of a wall of text. I'm going to do this for you, a few paragraphs, maybe a bulleted list, and then a big price tag. If we can make our offering more interactive, more helpful, easier to digest, I think that's a really big way to stand out. And it's a personal passion of mine. That's what we attempted to do with our software.
And I think, when I think about that, if I was working for Smart Pricing Table and I saw the, quality of products that you guys were sending out, or helping companies send out, that there would be a little bit of pride, of workmanship, I think that comes with that. And with that, there's got to be some kind of, internal impact on the morale of people that work at a company. Unpack that just a little bit.
Yeah, well, if your proposal is the thing that so much hinges on, then it's really important and it's worth the investment. And one of the things that it has an impact on, which is kind of you don't really think about, is actually the employee morale. I found that running a company, when we weren't profitable, or we weren't profitable on a project, or a project wasn't going well, it was very easy for my, as a leader, you try to abstract yourself, keep that away from your employees. But at the end of the day, they're going to see some of it. And if you're not profitable and your proposals aren't closing, you start to, employees start maybe looking around or having frustration.
No doubt about it.
And an example, I don't want to be too high level on this. So a real specific example is if you say, let's say that you are doing a email outreach campaign. Okay, I'm from the agency world, and so you're doing a cold email outreach campaign for a prospect, and you're scoping that out, what that looks like. If you do a bad job and it's unclear, that is going to go down and affect your employees, right? So let's say, for instance, you weren't clear about how many emails are included in that initial sequence that goes out. Okay. So your employee is now doing 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and they feel like they don't really have anything to grab onto because the proposal didn't limit that service.
Absolutely.
And so does that affect your employee? Absolutely. Does that affect your company morale and your profitability? Absolutely.
And I don't think people think, it's like second, third, fourth degree effect. It's kind of a knock-on effect, of the fact that you didn't kind of clearly delineate that, in the beginning. And I mean, you mentioned, just different employees and the morale. I specifically would think like your sales reps, they are out there just, pouring it all out. And then all of a sudden they've done everything they can do. And then you send a proposal that's not clear, or it's confusing, or it looks bad, doesn't look professional. And then the flip side of that, you can even cover up maybe some deficiencies in your sales force by having a really quality product. So I see a gain on both sides there.
Yeah, that's great. CEOs of businesses, agencies, et cetera. I think it does your salesperson or your sales team a great service to think through that process. Salespeople don't tend to be very system oriented. Okay.
Yep.
In order to do proposals really well, you have to build a system. I remember a quote. I don't know who said it. I rarely remember who says things, as my wife can attest. But the quote is, "Winners and losers both have goals. We all have goals. We all have aspirations, but it's the systems that help the winners actually achieve the goals." Okay. So don't send your sales guy out. Maybe a lot of times he's maybe non-technical to the actual offering that you're giving to the market. Don't send him or her out without tools, right? Yep. What are the things that we actually sell? What are the parameters? What are our pricing? And that all happens when you systematize your proposal writing by creating a catalog and just thinking through things.
And I think if I'm a business owner and I'm listening to this podcast, I'm doing my own systems inventory. As you're speaking, I'm thinking, so how do we do that? What is our sales process? How do we support that with, proposals or pro formas or whatever we're sending out, that are, related to kind of the sales process. But I love the idea that you talked about, having a system in place. And I want to circle back to that in just a second, but I want to get a little more granular because we kind of zipped by a little, something you really, really want to hone in on is the idea of not only clarity in your proposal, but avoiding, what we would call scope creep.
Right.
Tell me a little bit about that, about, how a good proposal kind of helps eliminate that or at least mitigate it.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to really diving into a particular concept. I'm sure we'll do that in a future episode. But one of the ideas that I love that transformed my marketing agency. We went from, having a very, rough proposal system to a really structured, killer, high close rate kind of setup. Was the idea of productizing your offering.
Yeah.
Okay? A lot of service companies they don't think this way because it's a service, right? Everything I do is custom. Really? Are you sure? Are you saying there's no patterns in your business? Because if there are no patterns in your business, I have news for you. You can never capitalize on what you're learning. Because every time you do a new project, something's going to change. So if you want to control scope creep, I think a huge part of that is actually going through all your services and spelling them out, whether it's in a Word doc, whether it's in a product like Smart Pricing Table, but actually spelling them out. And inside of that, you need to put limitations. And a big idea I like to talk about this is building a fence around your work.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
yep.
Break things down into smaller pieces, define each smaller piece and put a fence around it. Like, this is what we will do. This is what we're not doing. Here are some potential upsells, right? To get real practical, back to the cold email outreach campaign. Maybe being clear that we don't buy the list. Okay, we can't. That's not part of this. If you want us to, that's an extra cost. We don't buy the list. Or we're going to create one primary sequence. We're not doing two. We're not doing three. That's what I mean by productizing. You're actually thinking through it. And Kevin, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't tell you how many business owners that I talk to that, like, when they actually slow down to think through what they're offering, like, it's a really helpful exercise. You end up kicking out a lot of things that you don't actually enjoy doing and making your offering a lot stronger.
Hey, we get it. Building proposals is a pain for most agencies. It drains your time and your energy, and the fear of putting in all that work and being ghosted is real. But what if I told you there's a better way? Introducing Smart Pricing Table, the game-changing interactive proposal software designed specifically for agencies like yours. Learn more at smartpricingtable.com. It's, as you were saying that, I was thinking, the conversation we had a little earlier, the external benefits versus even internal benefits. I think, once again, there are external and internal benefits. I mean, if you can truly, productize your offering and really clearly fence it in such a way that everyone in the organization understands. They understand that product, they understand what's included, what's not included. Yeah. That clarity alone, I think, will positively affect morale. It will also keep you from having three people in your company say three different things to the same customer. Saying, do you guys even talk? Do you have any internal collaboration at all?
Love it. Yeah. And such a unity, right?
Yep.
Because when you're spelling things out, you get team buy-in.
Yep.
Right. It's not just the salesperson or the CEO spelling everything out, but you put it together, you draft it to your team, you get their feedback. And then when you're selling it, like, the sales guy is not surprised because he was involved in the process. Your project manager is not surprised because he was involved in the process. Your designers, whatever facilitators you have in your business, they were involved. And that's huge. Yeah.
And it's, internally that's true. It's also true externally, because then the client's not surprised. You clearly are, delineating the service very with clarity and with, practicality, I guess is another way to look at that. But so it does help you, I think, manage, or it helps them manage their own expectations of what they're agreeing to, so they're not surprised later. And it makes perfect sense if you say that's outside of the scope. We clearly listed the scope. This is outside of the scope. If you want this, we can do it. However, there is an additional cost because it's additional services that was not clearly laid out in the first. So talk about the kind of the expectations, and maybe even if you have any anecdotal evidence that says, hey, yeah, we ran into this and this is why we had to build a system.
Yeah, well, this tying this all back into scope of work, I think of this idea that good luck trying to control the scope if you didn't even establish it and maybe don't even know what it is. Right? Like I remember there's a quote, if there's a mist in the congregation, if there's a mist in the pulpit, there's a fog in the congregation. If preacher don't know what he's saying, congregation ain't got no clue, right? And so it's the same thing with your customers. If you don't know what you're selling, if you have not been had critical thought, thinking through what you want to offer and what the parameters are, I promise you, you're going to have pain with your customers, and they're not going to get it either. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's really big. Maybe this is an episode. This is great, Kevin. On this podcast, we can just think of all the different episodes we could have. But another thing I just think is, man, the power of patterns. Systems are built around patterns, and you've got to pick as a business, what do I actually do, right? What am I actually going to sell? Because if you can do that, if you can find those patterns, find those offerings, and then start repeating them, what you'll find is you build intellectual capital, and it gets better and better and better. And talking about internal and external happiness and morale and stuff, when you have patterns, basically what you're saying to your customers, your prospects, and your team, we've done this before, right?
Yep.
You give your team some help them relax by not doing completely different projects all the time. Help them get better, grow together as you specialize, as you find those patterns, and just the return is just incredible.
So, I mean, there you go. Tee up my segues again. I mean, the idea that you just ended that little short sermon you just delivered for us here, but ended it with return. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about the impact of, good proposals on the bottom line. How does it affect profitability, and maybe even talk about your own, what you've seen within, within the smart pricing table, and the impact you've had with the companies you've worked with.
Yeah, well, I'd say I'm writing down a few just kind of bullet points here. Benefits of investing in your proposal system, right? Mm-hmm. That's the question. The first one I wrote down is morale. We've kind of beat that one a bit, but huge. And not just your team, but you, right? Yep. The sales leader or the CEO to have confidence that you are clear, and it's clear to your prospects what you're bringing to the market. The next thing I'd say, investing in your proposal system helps with margin. Look, if you are breaking down your offering into the smaller parts, modularizing it, you're going to price things better. The more you think critically about your offering, you're going to price things better, mm-hmm. right? Thinking about upsells and cross-pollinating different offerings, like all of that investment can lead to more margin. It'll give you more margin, less scope creep.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, I was thinking that very thing. Yep.
Right. So if it's clear, one concept we could talk about some other time that I love is the vague vortex. When you're vague, you just get sucked in there. Your whole team, all your profits, your dignity, it's like it just sucks everything in there because you weren't clear. But when you're clear and you have reusable offerings, it helps your margin. Okay, it helps you be profitable. A third one I'd say, and I could probably come up with 5 others. Give me a few more minutes, but the third one I'd say on this is closing faster. Okay, when you have a good proposal system with clarity, again, what you're telling your customer is, I've been through this before. Okay. When your proposal looks good and there's optionality and interactivity, you're going to close faster because you look better than your competitors. Interactivity allows you to not have to do so much back and forth. Imagine, let me give you a concrete example. I love practical examples. Let's say you have a $20,000 proposal and you have $3,000 of optional line items that are turned on. Okay, but they're optional. The customer can turn them off. You might think that, oh, that's scary. They could go down to 17,000. But what if their max budget is 18,000? And if they can hit that, they can sign without any more approval from their higher ups.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So would you rather have $18,000 instead of 20, or would you rather have 0?
Those are the options. That's right.
So when you interactivity can really interactivity and a thought out proposal process can really help close things faster because you've answered questions and you've empowered your prospect.
And you did mention about the idea of pricing the product well too. If you have a clear understanding of what the different modules are that or products that you're kind of piecing together to make the overall proposal, and it's not just scope creep, it's also deciding what's the exact amount of time it should take somebody to do each element of the process. So you're really refining the process. It's your pricing system, that you're creating. But yeah, I certainly see the value of in just so many different ways of how this really does matter and impacts the bottom line. And the example you just gave was the person that said, I've got a budget of 18,000. There's also a comfortability factor. You're kind of de-risking the transaction because you're saying, they may not go back and ask for the other 2,000. They may just spend it, but yet they've kind of walked out on a limb too and said, I could lose my job over this, or I could really, be called on the carpet, so to speak. But it is such a uniquely important process that seems to be somewhat neglected so often. It's like a necessary evil. I got to send you a price quote, or I got to send this to you, and you either accept it or not. But I did say we're going to circle back to the system itself. You mentioned that just briefly earlier, but walk us through that as we kind of close out our first episode today. But walk us through the importance of building a system, and maybe even walk us through what a typical system might look like.
Yeah. And I think that, I kind of want to leave a teaser here a little bit, because subscribe to the podcast and you're going to get a bunch of this, right? We're going to, Kevin and I are going to get into the nitty gritty. We're going to talk about maybe one little thing that we touched on and go really in depth on it. And so subscribe and get those future topics. I would say the kind of system that you want to build, kind of baseline stuff. I would say first invest in proposal specific software. Okay, that's really important. Don't use generic software like Word or Google Docs. That it's not going to have the right features. Then I would say start building reusable content like line item content, content for terms, content for pages, and then bring that all together in your system. And I'll just say this, Kevin, I don't want to plug Smart Pricing Table too much in this. I want this to be a high value podcast, lots and lots of tips and tricks. But we're talking about system, okay? Mm-hmm. And it's a great system for assembling all those reusable pieces, okay? The next part of the system, I would say, is some templates. So put together some templates based on that content and the line items. I would then push a proposal review meeting, which we'll talk about extensively in another episode, very important that if you can, pitch it on a Zoom meeting or in person right with your prospect. Okay. The next thing is figure out your follow-up. I always like to book a meeting while I'm in the current meeting, right? So what's the next thing after this proposal review meeting? I like to ask some really important questions and then use technology, open receipts, analytics to understand how they're engaging with the proposal. So that's how I'd sketch out the whole a basic process and the way that I want to educate folks on this podcast. So much on each of those topics.
What a way to wrap up today. I mean, you kind of tied everything together that we've talked about for the last 15 or 20 minutes here, but just the whole idea of the importance of proposals, the importance of quality proposals, having a quality system in place to kind of mitigate scope creep, really to help meet expectations, not only of the client, but even internally, impact on morale, that you mentioned, the whole idea of the impact on your bottom line. I mean, how does it truly impact profitability? And this idea of building a system that we're certainly going to unpack, in future episodes. But yeah, Joe, this has been a great chat we've had today. What a way to launch this new podcast. Is there anything you just kind of want to wrap us up with today? Final thought.
Here's what I'd say, and I want to kind of whet the palate for future episodes. Proposal writing doesn't have to stink. I can tell you with a clean conscience, I freaking loved it. But the reason why I loved it is because I built a system and I could assemble things instead of doing it a little by little. You need to understand that your proposal is more than just one little tiny part of your business. If done right, it actually has the DNA of your business all over it. And can set the stage for tremendous success. So if you're not having fun writing proposals, you don't like it, it's just not an enjoyable experience, tune in for future episodes because we're going to make it fun again.
Joe, what a way to wrap us up today, buddy. Thank you for just listening to our first podcast, the Proposal Playbook. Looking forward to future episodes. And this has such a broad appeal and broad effect, to virtually any company type, any size, any type of company out there that really does need to write and, create, produce, follow up. I love that you mentioned that as well. Have a quality follow-up process of writing good proposal writing. So please tune in each week or each couple of weeks and learn more about how to do quality proposals. Once again, it's brought to us by the Smart Pricing Table. Joe, thanks again for joining us. Looking forward to catching up.
Likewise, Kevin.
As we wrap up another great episode of the Proposal Playbook, I want to end with one question. Are you leaving money on the table with your proposals? Introducing Smart Pricing Table, the ultimate agency proposal software with built-in upsell features. Maximize your revenue today. Visit smartpricingtable.com/DAG to learn more and to download our free guide, The Profitable Proposal Blueprint. Thanks again for listening.